nation's first ever limits on power plant carbon emissions today. The Clean Power Plan will require a 32% cut in power plant carbon emissions by the year 2030. Take a listen to the video that the White House posted over the weekend.
Our climate is changing. It's changing in ways that threaten our economy, our security, and our health. This isn't opinion, it's fact, backed up by decades of carefully collected data and overwhelming scientific consensus. And it has serious implications for the way that we live now. We can see it, and we can feel it. Hotter summers, rising sea levels, extreme weather events like stronger storms, deeper droughts, and longer wildfire seasons. All disasters that are becoming more frequent, more expensive, and more dangerous.
Joining us this morning, Brian Deese is the White House Senior Advisor overseeing climate conservation and energy policy. Brian, good morning to you.
Good morning.
You want to walk us through some of the goals of the plan and the benchmarks by which it will be judged?
Sure. Well, the plan is, at its core, is very simple. We have never had limits on the carbon pollution from power sources in the United States. Once this plan is in place, we will set long-term targets, and then states will have time to put together plans to comply with those targets in a very flexible way at the state level. So states will make choices to invest in clean energy sources or a different mix based on what's in their geographic area.
To what degree is it targeting coal specifically? Because you're joining us on a morning where we have yet another coal miner filing for Chapter 11. There might be some people who argue the market's already turning away from it. Why does this cry out for policy?
Well, it is true that this rule goes with the grain of where the market is headed. You are seeing increased investment in cleaner sources of energy, be that cleaner burning natural gas or renewables. But it's important that we set targets to reduce emissions because we have a vital threat in addressing climate change. The rule, it does that in a way that actually reinforces a number of the dynamics we're seeing in industry, and I think you'll see that utilities will have the time and the space they need to make long-term investments under this rule to keep that momentum going.
But the thinking is that the market's going that way, but you need the government to sort of goose it along even further or faster?
Well, we have a long tradition under the Clean Air Act of setting limits on pollution that gets pumped into the air. We've done that for acid rain in other areas, and it's worked to a great effect. We reduce carbon pollution, we increase public health benefits, we reduce incidence of asthma, and we achieve solid policy outcomes while at the same time creating long-term incentives for investment that will help with jobs and economic activity in the United States as well.
Brian, I didn't realize, given the amount of noise that you have on television and on the internet, that actually Americans are as concerned about climate change, according to the Pew Institute on their recent survey, than arguably the Europeans as well. They are more concerned, certainly, than China, less concerned than Africa and Latin America. I guess the question is whether they're willing to pay for that. Recently, the Wall Street Journal poll suggested that 49% of people in this country oppose your intervention on private companies if it raises the cost of their utility bills. And the very powerful argument from Marco Rubio is, why should we do this if China and India are going to burn anything they can get their hands on?
Well, I'd say a couple things. First, it's actually false that this plan will increase energy costs. If you look at the analysis that will be released today, the typical consumer will save about $85 on their electricity bills because we're going to be moving to not only cleaner but cheaper sources of energy, and we'll be wasting less energy as well. Second, our commitment domestically to move on these types of activities is precisely the leadership we need to get a durable international agreement that actually will level the playing field and will make sure that as we move to cleaner sources of energy, the world is moving in that direction as well. The President has been leading internationally. This kind of action puts us in a stronger position to get that kind of international agreement as well.
Brian, we know the Supreme Court just struck down some of the 2012 EPA regulations for not taking costs and other factors into account. One of the lawyers writes today in the Wall Street Journal that governors should try not to adopt this particular plan you guys are coming out with and suggest perhaps this might be unconstitutional too. What's your response to that?
Look, this is a rule that is on strong and solid legal foundation. The Clean Air Act provides EPA clear authority and in fact compels EPA to regulate this source of pollution. And EPA has done it in a way that is flexible and is responsive to a year-long effort, exhaustive effort, to take into account more than 4 million comments to this rule. So we feel very confident about the legal foundation. We think that we're going to see across the country more and more states and electricity commissioners working with us to try to put in place workable plans. We've given them more time to do so. We're confident that this plan will end up staying in place and will help drive a cleaner energy mix in the country.
And to those who perhaps cynically would say, well, you know, we do our part, but China and India are still going to be putting an awful lot of carbon into the atmosphere, more so than they ever have. So it's not really going to help the underlying problem of climate change.
Well, you know, President Obama and President Xi last year announced a historic agreement, and China for the first time agreed to keep their emissions and begin to reduce emissions as well. President Obama went to India and sat with Prime Minister Modi as well, and Prime Minister Modi acknowledged the imperative to work to address climate change. You're going to see President Obama continue to lead internationally because we do need an agreement that reflects that countries come from different starting points, but we all need to be part of the collective effort to combat climate change.
And you will have those climate talks in Paris coming up in December. Do you expect by that point for McConnell to have stopped telling governors to not comply, or for the court somehow to have validated this policy?
But this is a process that's going to go on. I can't speak for what others will do. I know that across the country, when you get outside of Washington and you get beyond some of the hot partisan rhetoric, what you're seeing is a growing recognition that these targets are achievable, they're reasonable, and that states have a lot of tools and a lot of flexibilities to try to accomplish them. So what I expect is a solid conversation at the state level about how they can comply with these plans, and the work that will go into developing those plans will continue as we go through the course of the fall and into early next year.
Brian, we appreciate your time. It's obviously a huge issue for the markets, and we'll see what the president says this afternoon. That's Brian Deese, White House senior advisor overseeing climate conservation and energy policy. Be sure to tune in to Power Lunch today, where the president officially announces this plan around 2 p.m. Eastern Time, as we said.
And straight ahead, auto sales